Okay, today's stuff is 133, and we are um, at Amar of Huna, which is about 7 lines from the top, first word on the line. So we've been talking about a person who gives away property not in the proportions which are which the inheritance laws would dictate. Say somebody is on his deathbed and he deeds all of his property to somebody else, someone who's not one of his inheritors, not one of his heirs. Rowing, so we look at the situation. Imroili Arsho, if so I jumped the gun there. It's not clear if it's one of the heirs. So Imroili Arsho, if the person is an heir, so if he prefers one son, excuse me, over all the other sons, Notlon Misham Yerusha. Mishum Yerusha, not only Mishum Yerusha, then that person gets the property as an heir. Vim Lav, but if it's not an heir, not only Mishum Atana, then he gets the properties, but as a gift. So, like, what's the difference? Amalei of Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman says, "Gan v'genuvein lamalach." Why are you kind of being sneaky about what you're saying? Easter lach Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, emalach Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka. If you're trying to say that the halacha is like Rabbi Yochanan, that you can give away not in accordance with inheritance laws, and just say so. Like, what are you kind of parsing it this way? Is it a gift? Is it inheritance? Daha shematzech through Rabbi Yochanan Baroka who diasla, because what you're teaching is like it accords with Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka. He's the only one who says that you can that the Shliv Meirah can give a property bequest as an inheritance. So Dilma Kiha Kamra. So maybe Rav Nachman says, maybe I'm misunderstanding you. Maybe you're talking about a specific case. There was a certain person who was on his deathbed, and they said to him, who do you want us to give your property to? Maybe to John Doe, to so and so. And he said, El so then who? Answering a question with a question. The Amrat Allah, and you ruled in that case, Imrali Yarsho, if that person was an heir, not Lamishum Yerusha, then he gets it as a inheritance. Not Lamishum Matana. Then he gets it as, if not, then he gets it as a gift. So we're talking, so maybe you're not saying Allah is like Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka. Maybe you're saying that it makes a difference whether you're giving it as an inheritance or a gift. Now I know you're all wondering what's the difference. We're going to get there in a second. Yes, that's what I was getting at. It wasn't whether we allow somebody to give away his property not in accordance with inheritance laws. The question is, do we consider that an inheritance or a gift? But what's the difference? So Ravada wanted to say to Rava, maybe if it is an heir, then the man's widow, she gets support from the property, right? Because that's the rule that in case of an inheritance, then the man's widow is entitled to living expenses from the property as long as she is alive. From the produce of the property, right? Vim lav, but if it's not a Yerusha, if it's considered a gift, that rule does not apply to a gift. If the man gives away property to someone who's not inheriting, it's not an inheritance, then that rule doesn't apply. So maybe that's the difference, whether we consider this an inheritance or a gift. Rava says, Migra Gara. Like, really, are you saying that like, just because the guy is a Shlimeram, we apply special rules to the deathbed bequest, so the widow should suffer? Hashta Birusha Daraisa, if it were a real inheritance, Amrat Almanasan Nizalus Min Chasov, the widow can get. The rabbi said that the widow can get sustenance from that property, living expenses from that property. Matana Drabanan Lokal Shekain. So, consider the case of a deathbed bequest, right? If the guy were to die and without having made the bequest, who gets the property? The heirs, right? It becomes an estate. So now the rabbis made a rule that, and that is a Torah law, right? And now if the rabbis made a rule that the Shliv Meirach can give a gift, right, without the usual requirements, so are you going to say that they're doing it to the detriment of the widow? That doesn't make sense. Elam Rava, so Rava said, Kidushalach Ravacha bar Rav Avia. Maybe the difference between Matanya and Yerusha is like Ravacha said. According to Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, who says you can distribute assets before death, not in accordance with inheritance law. What if somebody says, I'm giving you my property, and after you, like if you die or whatever, then it goes to somebody else, to a certain other person. So Imhay Rishon Royally Arsho, if the first person was a Yoresh, was an heir, and Lasheni b'makom Rishon Klum, then the second guy has no rights, because how does the first guy get entitled to the property? Through inheritance rights. Well, guess what? You don't get to make a condition on them, because this guy gets the property not because of your Tanai, not because of your bequest, because he's a valid inheritor, a valid heir. So he owns it completely. However, if you give it as a gift, then you're allowed to put in the conditions that you wish to put in. There's nothing stopping you. Um, um, because if he's giving it as an inheritance, then it's inheritance. And there's no reason for the once it's been inherited for anything to take back that inheritance. But in the case of a matana, you would be allowed to make that condition. So Rava says, wait a minute, the afsika. But like in the case that we're talking about, didn't the guy say? Didn't he put in that condition? Like the fact that the story is being related with that condition makes it sound like it's a valid condition. So the answer is not necessarily whosoever. Like the guy who was speaking, the guy who was dying, he thought it would work. Rahman Amarin Lefsek, but it's really the rule of the Torah rule is that it doesn't take effect. Okay, so that seems to be a good the Gemara accepts that as a difference between in this case between Matana and Yerusha, that a gift can be subject to conditions, but Yerusha and inheritance cannot be subject to conditions of the giver, of the bequester. Right? There was a case of a person who said to his friend, exactly what we just said. I'm giving you my property, and then it goes to somebody else, goes to John. Rishon royally Arshahava. And it happened in this case that the first person who he gave it to was one of his heirs. Rishon, first guy dies. Also shame because Hava. Second guy comes along and wants the property. So Rav Elish Chame Rav Elish wanted to say before Rava, Shani Namishakil, the second guy should get the inheritance, the property. Amalei, Dayane de Chatzatzda Hachidaine. That kind of ruling would be one that a compromising judge, a judge that splits the difference without making a decision. You're saying you don't have the courage to make a decision. This is you're being compromising. This is exactly the case like Ravacha sent. And he said that inheritance, can't be taken back. So Rav Elish was embarrassed. Karile, Ani Hashem be'itach ishana. So Rav said to him, don't worry, don't feel bad. The verse in Yeshayahu is, I think, Yeshayahu. Yeah, it applies to you that God says, I will make it come in its proper time. In other words, I think he's saying the fact that I was here and as you discuss this ruling means that God was sending you guidance, right? So like, don't feel so bad. You didn't, nothing, no harm, no foul.
In our times, Beit-Dins often do compromise in property matters.
Yeah, in fact, the Gemara in other places seems to say that shalom is better than din, right? That
Right.
you should find a um so I don't know, like compromising it may be not what's intended here. It's unclear what chatzatsta means.
Let me see what Steinsaltz says. Um, doesn't have a language note. He says,
And also, he's not dividing here, right? He's not like, what's the
uh,
compromise? He's saying that he's ruling the second guy gets it, right? He's
okay,
not
so
saying,
he's
well, I don't know what to do, so we'll give half of it to the second guy. That to me would be a compromise.
so
Um,
so Steinsaltz says that it's Rashbam who says that Hazatzka, Hazatzka, I can't pronounce it. Haz-
yeah, that word,
yeah,
chatzatsta,
means compromise. Rabbeinu Gershom says the same thing. Rabbeinu Hananel says it means judges of graves.
of
Maharsha
graves.
says, although the giver is in the grave, assume that the inheritance can be halted. That is not the halakha. Uh, or there are judges who know nothing like the dead. Oh, that's a
Um,
okay. That, that's Rabbeinu.
yeah, that fits the case better. Although it's
Yeah,
a little
because
harsh.
if someone's gone and can't object.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, it seemed a little harsh, but then that's why Rava thought it kind of came back
Yeah,
and was more he kind of consoled him or what's not console, what's what I'm looking for?
yeah.
Uh you know, he tried to make him feel better. Next Mishnah. Person gives his property to somebody else, and he disinherited his children. He left them without anything. Masha asayase. What is done is done. In other words, the gift works. Ela ein rachacham lo. But the rabbis aren't happy about this. Like it works, but it's not something you should do. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, im lo hayu banav nogin kishura, if his children were rebellious, like they were not behaving properly, they weren't worthy of inheriting his property, Zachalatov, then it's praiseworthy. Then we remember him well for disinheriting these wicked sons. So the Gemara says, "Miplika Rabbanan alei Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel alo." Do the rabbis, by which I think they mean the Tanakama, um, is this an argument, right? So the Tanakama says this isn't something you should do, and Rabbi Gamliel says, but you know what? There's a case where it is something you should do. So is he arguing or is he clarifying? Tashma, let's try and figure it out. The Yosef ben Yoezer Hayalobain. Yosef ben Yoezer had a rebellious son. Hava le Elisa de Dinre. And Yosef ben Yoezer had a bag of gold. Komaktasha. And so this is the father, right? The father took this bag of gold and he gave it to Hekdesh. He gave it to the temple. Um, Azil Nasiv Bas Gadil Kalile Diyanai Malka. The son goes ahead and he marries well, right? He marries the daughter of the crown maker for King Yanai, right? Olida Devisu, and they had a son, Zavin La Binisa, and he bought her a fish, Kara, and she filleted the fish, Ashko Marglisa, and found a pearl inside. Amrle, so the wife said to him, Lo tamtiye lamalka. So, what are you going to do with this pearl? You got something valuable, but you have to fence it, you have to sell it, right? So she advises him, Lo tamtiye lamalka. Look, don't bring it to the king's jewelers, who you're that's your crowd, right? But don't bring it to them for appraisal. To shakli lach minach b'dmei kalile. They're not going to give you a good price. Zil amtiye legabe gizbari. Go instead to the temple, right? And ask them for for an appraisal or sell it to them. And don't and when you go there, you don't be the first. So don't tell them, hey, I have a pearl here I think is worth 100 grand, right? Don't you do that. Don't make the first move. Dami Russell Kimsi Russell ahead yet, because they're going to say, aha, you've valued it and you've come to the temple. We're going to consider that like you've already donated it to us, right? We're not going to pay you for it. Just take it to them, let them see the pearl and tell you how much they think it's worth. And then, take that appraisal and I guess you can go sell it or whatever. So he did. So he goes to the temple. Shamuha b'tzleise ilasai dinari. They said this is worth 13 bags of gold. That must have been some pearl. Amri Le, so they said, Shivaika. They said, you know what? We want to buy this from you, but we don't have that much money in the treasury right now. We only have 7 bags of gold. She's like, and we're short 6, so we'd like to buy it from you, but we don't have the money. So he said to them, Shavahavali, give me the 7. I'll take the 7. She's Harehe Mukdashos Shamayim, and the rest is a donation, right? The whatever the 6 bags of gold that you don't have, I'm donating that, as it were, or that portion of the pearl. Amdu Kasfu. So they wrote wrote down the transaction. Yosef ben Yoezer hichnis achas. Yosef ben Yoezer. Remember, the beginning of the story was Yosef ben Yoezer. He started the story by donating 1 bag of gold to the temple. So Yosef ben Yoezer gave us 1 bag of gold. Ubeno hichnis sheish, and the son brought in 6 bags of gold. Remember, they paid him 7, and he donated what they didn't have, which was the 6. Some say this is how they wrote it. Yosef ben Yoezer, the father, gave us 1 bag of gold, and the son took out 7, right? Because that's what they did have. They had 7 bags of gold, they gave it to him. So it's the same transaction written different ways. Now, what does this story prove? Midaka amre hichnis, miklal de shapiravad. If they wrote it that Yosef ben Eliezer gave us a nice donation, right, of 6 bags of gold, that's praiseworthy, right? That means that that they liked him, right? Not that he was a rebellious son. So Gemara says, Adarabba, no. On the other hand, what about the second version? Midakamre Hotzi, if they wrote it as, oh, Yosef ben Eliezer, he fleeced us for 7 bags of gold, right? Then that's a negative thing. So maybe he was a rebellious son. And the point is, like in the beginning of the story, he was disinherited, right? So we're trying to figure out, was he a good guy or a bad guy, the son? Because the love shopper heaven. No, we can't figure that one way or another from here what Yosef ben Yoezer's son was like. What we can figure out is that his wife was a good businesswoman. My Havila. So we're still left with the original question. Is there an argument in the Mishnah, or are they agreeing? Tashma, let's prove it. Yamarle Shmuel Rav Yehuda. Shmuel said to Rav Yehuda, Shinna, smart guy. Lota heavy bay abure achasanta. Don't try not to place yourself in a place where this is happening, where an inheritance is being given away to somebody who's not an heir. Even if it seems to you like it's a good outcome, like it's being taken away from the bad son and given to the good son. And certainly not if it's going from a son to a daughter. So it seems like we are, we don't want to be around. We don't want to participate in that, even if it is from, taking away from from a wicked son. So that would indicate that there is a view that it's okay to take it away from the wicked son, and it's stated, that not according to Rav Shimon Gamliel. So it seems like there is a counter view to Rav Shimon Gamliel, and so the Mishnah does represent an argument and not an expansion. Ton
It's
Rabbana.
interesting that they're using the term dinars, which would refer to the Roman silver coin, the denarius,
Yeah.
which was just under 4 grams, and it's about the size of a modern U.S. dime, but twice as thick.
Uh-huh.
At that time, the Hasmoneans were actually minting coins, but they were copper or bronze coins, not silver coins.
Mm-hmm. How about that?
So, what would be? Uh, it's interesting that they
They're
would have
talking about bags of golden coins. Yeah.
so many silver coins in the treasury. They were, and it was these were Roman coins.
Well, you know what? I followed the translation here that says gold coins, but what did we refer to gold actually?
Gold. The denarius was a silver coin. The gold coin in Roman times was the aureus, and it was not used very often as a medium of trade.
Yeah, but where do we get the idea that these denarii are gold?
The Persians had a coin about the same size much later that was sometimes called a denarius.
Hmm.
But
But why is the translation I'm using refer to gold? It doesn't seem to be in the text. It just talks about denarii,
yeah,
right? So
good
for
question.
me to say it was gold was not called for.
Yeah, I don't know where they would have gotten that. Gold coins were rarely used for commerce in the Roman Empire or
Uh,
the areas near it.
you
That
would
they really
probably
became
enjoy.
common during the Sassanid Persian Empire and in Muslim times.
Hmm. You'd be interested if you ever get to Tel Aviv. There's a museum called the Museum of Eretz Israel, and they have
Uh-huh.
an amazing exhibit of the history of coins.
Cool.
Uh, and it goes all the way back. You know, that this there was a guy donated it. He was a big coin collector, and he collected all these ancient coins. And of course, you find a lot of those in Israel, right? In archaeological digs and whatnot. And it was really a very, very interesting. A lot of the things you mentioned are covered, and many more.
Yeah. There was an exhibit at the Metropolitan Museum, oh, I guess about a decade ago, and it included a section of a stash of a treasure ship that had sunk right off the coast of Israel, and it was packed with Islamic gold coins.
Ooh, I think I remember reading about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw it. It's unbelievable the amount of gold that was available, but gold was not really used much in Europe. It was for commerce or in
Okay.
Israel.
Okay.
And the only Hasmonean coins, and I think the only Bar Haradian or Bar Kokhba coins were copper.
Hmm.
I don't think they did any silver or gold coins.
Okay. Moving on. Tana Rabbana. Rabbi
We
Sam.
out here that the Rabbanan did disagree with Reb Shimon ben Gamliel.
Yes, right. Or there is another view that does not agree with Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, so we can assume that that's what's being reflected in the Mishnah. Two different views. Tana Rabbana. Rabbi Sam. Masa b'yadam echad, shelo heyu banav noegin kishorei. There was a man whose sons he didn't approve of their behavior. Amar l'kasan l'chasav li'Yonasan ben Uziel, so he gave away their inheritance to Yonasan ben Uziel, who we will see more about tomorrow. Me'asa, Yonasan ben Uziel, what did that guy do? Machar shalish, he sold a third. The Hifli shalish, he gave a third to the temple. V'hachzir l'Levana shalish, and he gave back a third to the actual heirs. Ball of Shammai b'maklo v'tarmilo. So Shammai rushed over with his his walking stick and his backpack. Um, Amrlo. Uh, 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 Basically, it's a sign that he came to object to what Rabbi Yonasan ben Uziel did. Um, in other words, not the part where he kept some and gave it to Hektish, but that he gave it back to the heirs. Amarlo, so Yonasan ben Uziel says to him, Shammai, like, what's your problem here? Um, is it um, if your problem is, that I got the whole thing improperly, then take back everything, right? The part that I sold and the part that I gave to Hektish, take that back too. So then I'll tell you, then in that case, you can object to the part that I gave back to the sons. In other words, look, if you think it was mine, I can give it to whoever I want. It doesn't matter that they were disinherited heirs, right? I can give it to whoever I want to. Imlav, if you don't, if you think that I got it, that that it passed to me in the first place, I could do with it as I want. You can't object to how I just chose to distribute it. Amar, so Shammai said, Hetiach alai ben Uziel, Hetiach alai ben Uziel. Like, yeah, you know what? He criticized me, or basically he gave in. He realized that Yonatan ben Uziel had his number. Now, Meikar myself, but what was Shammai's original thought? Mishamasi de Beischaran, because of Maseh de Beis Charon, this case that took place in Beis Charon. It's not. What's that Mishnah? Maseh Beis Charon, the Achashaya Aviv Mudar Hemenu Hana. There was a case where a man had sworn off Hana from his sons. Mudar Hana Hemenu Hana. No, the person, a person's father, like, swore not to get any benefit from the son. And this guy was marrying off his son. And he said, and he wants his father to come, but his father can't accept a meal from him, can't accept a wedding invitation from him. So what did he do? He said to a third party, I'm giving you, the whole wedding, right? I've bought everything for the wedding. I rented the hall. I'm giving it all to you. The reason I'm doing it is so that you can invite my father to the wedding. Like, I can't invite my father to the wedding because he can't accept it from me, but he can accept it from you. So you can, I'm giving you everything, and you invite my father. Amar lo, im shalihin, and he says, if it's mine, now I'm giving the whole thing to Akdish, and nobody can come to the wedding. Amar lo, so he said, that's not why I gave it to you. That wasn't part of the deal. So the recipient says to him, so in that case, it's clear that you weren't really giving me a gift. You were just doing a ruse, right? Which he clearly was. Umaratin zelazeh. So you wanted to make up with your father. The avon tali baroshi. So you're putting me in an uncomfortable position because it's clearly a ruse. You're using me to get around your father's netter. I don't want that responsibility. If there's a gift that the recipient can't give it to Hektish, if that's the condition of the gift, and a matana, then that doesn't count. It's not a gift at all. So Shammai thought this case should be the same with Yonatan ben Uziel. Now, in the case of Yonasan ben Uziel, there wasn't an explicit condition, right? Not like the wedding, where the guy says, I'm giving this to you so that you can invite my father, or only if you invite my father. So then that's not a real gift. But in the case of Yonasan ben Uziel, the father really was giving it to Yonasan ben Uziel. There was no condition here. And he didn't say, on condition that you don't give any to my son, right? Maybe that was his intention, that he didn't want his sons together, but he didn't say so. So therefore, Yonasan ben Uziel was right, that it was a full gift, and he had the right to do whatever he wanted, even if it went against what the father was trying to do. Okay, we'll stop here. Have a good day, everybody. And
and I have a correction to make.
Mm-hmm.
Bar Kokhba did produce silver coins.
Okay. Thank you.
They may have been just Roman denariuses, or denarii in Latin, overstruck.
Okay.
Bar
Thanks for
mint.